Our listeners have sent in some really cool stuff this time. Really cutting edge AI in healthcare. Let's dive in. We're going deep on something called coordinated AI agent networks,
Yeah.
or what some are calling multi-agent systems for healthcare, MASH.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of progress with those individual AI models
Right.
do all sorts of things in medicine,
Yeah.
from, calculating risk to even some of the operational parts of running a hospital.
hmm
But I think there's a big change happening,
hmm
and that is thinking about these AI models not as like separate tools, but as teams that can actually work together.
Exactly. Going from like a single brilliant specialist to a whole network of them working together.
Yeah.
And that's really what MSH is all about.
Exactly.
These centralized networks of these specialized AI agents all working together
Yeah.
to tackle all these different healthcare tasks.
Exactly.
Everything from, direct clinical stuff like predicting patient risks or doing continuous monitoring of health to the more operational stuff like, scheduling appointments or even, processing insurance claims. This is a real evolution.
It really is. And it's important to understand why we need that evolution.
Yeah.
Because the AI models we have currently, even though they're impressive, they typically operate in isolation.
Right.
They don't have the ability to inherently communicate and coordinate with other AI systems.
Right.
And that really limits, their full potential. And sometimes they can provide insights that are disconnected.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to get over with these coordinated systems.
Okay, so we've got all these AI models.
Yeah.
The real magic seems to happen when they're connected.
Yeah.
So how does this integration actually work?
Yeah.
What happens when you link these multiple large language models, these LLMs,
Yeah.
into a network?
Well, the exciting thing is that by integrating them in that way,
Yeah.
they become much more than just language processors.
Right.
They become AI agents with a whole new set of capabilities.
Yeah.
And this includes things like the ability to communicate with each other,
Hmm.
but to do so using natural language, human-like language. They can also plan things. They can reason through complex information.
Wow.
They can search the internet
Yeah.
and even specialized databases to pull out important data. And even navigate those sometimes annoying graphical user interfaces that we've all come across.
Right.
And even generate code when needed.
That's a huge leap in functionality. They become so much more self-directed, capable.
They do. And research has shown that these agentic and multi-agentic systems can actually outperform the standard way of giving a single LLM a prompt
Right.
when it comes to those complex tasks.
Right.
And so as these LLMs that form the foundation improve,
Yeah.
the performance of these multi-agent systems is boosted quite a bit.
Hmm.
And, the LLMs are getting better, things like their parameter counts,
Yeah.
the size of their training data sets, the compute power being used, it's all increasing.
And you mentioned these LLMs are becoming more and more advanced. What are some of those key advancements?
So developers are still working on scaling the size of the models.
Okay.
More parameters means they can process and understand more complex information.
Right.
And they're being trained on bigger and more varied data sets.
Yeah.
And just the amount of computing power that's dedicated to their training is increasing all the time. But it's not just about size. There are these newer architectures like OpenAI's O1 model, and they even show scaling during inference.
Mm-hmm.
So when the model's actually being used,
Okay.
and that's because they've got this kind of built-in thinking process, almost like they're reasoning more deliberately before they give an answer.
Mhm.
And there's also research showing that the settings of some models can actually be adjusted on the fly during testing to kind of optimize performance. So all of that just leads to much more powerful engines that can drive these multi-agent systems.
That makes sense. Now, within this network of agents, do they all kind of function in the same way? Not really.
Are they all equally independent?
No. There's a kind of spectrum of how they operate,
Okay.
from highly autonomous to more of an assistive role.
Okay.
An autonomous AI agent is one that can pretty much work on its own.
Okay.
It can gather data, process it, and then take actions, but within its own little area of expertise,
Right.
without any direct human intervention. So, like that radiology AI we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
It can analyze images, figure out what's wrong, and then automatically generate a preliminary report.
Okay, so that's pretty independent. What about on the assistive end?
So assistive AI agents are more about supporting human decision-making.
Okay.
So they give insights or recommendations, to the healthcare professionals.
Yeah.
But the final decision is still with the human.
Right.
A good example is like a conversational AI
Okay.
powered by one of these really advanced LLMs. It could answer complicated medical questions based on the latest research and guidelines.
So it's a really powerful tool for healthcare professionals.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's the doctor who's making the judgment call.
So the potential of these coordinated AI agents is super exciting. But as you mentioned earlier, there are some real hurdles
Yeah.
in getting them to work together well
Yes.
in these decentralized systems.
Definitely.
So what are the biggest challenges there?
Well, seamless coordination is tough,
Yeah.
just like with any team, right? These agents need to communicate well, share what they see, and coordinate their actions.
Right.
If one agent figures out something important, it needs to be able to tell the right others in the network. So we need really strong communication protocols,
Okay.
a common understanding between agents.
And if they can't communicate well, that could lead to some serious problems, right?
For sure. And it's not just about communication. We also have to make sure that the overall output of the MASH is reliable.
Right.
Right. We don't want errors or biases from one agent spreading through the whole network.
Yeah.
And potentially causing harm to a patient. It's like a chain reaction.
Right.
So we need validation mechanisms at each stage of their interaction.
So how do you prevent that kind of cascading error?
Well, giving each agent the right roles and responsibilities is really important.
Okay.
The system has to figure out which agent is best for each task,
Mm.
taking into account things like how complex the task is,
Yeah.
what the risks are,
Right.
ethical and regulatory considerations. You wouldn't want a fully autonomous AI making high-stakes diagnostic decisions without any oversight,
Right.
at least not in the beginning.
Right.
So we need these really sophisticated task allocation mechanisms within the MH architecture.
Okay, that makes sense. Matching the right agent with the right job. Are there examples of this kind of multi-agent coordination in other fields
Yeah,
that could maybe offer some lessons for healthcare?
for sure. So people are looking at multi-agent frameworks in all sorts of areas,
Yeah.
from robotics to software development. And there's even a really interesting healthcare example. Some researchers developed an architecture that has a main AI agent that can talk to patients
Wow.
with voice.
Okay.
And it's got a whole team of specialized sub-agents backing it up.
Mm.
Experts in medications, lab results, hospital policies, electronic health records, even privacy regulations.
Yeah.
And get this, when they evaluated it, this system actually did better than humans on several metrics in these really complex multi-turn conversations.
Whoa.
So it's a really good example of what could be possible.
That's really encouraging. So let's look into the future now.
Okay.
What's the ultimate vision for these mesh networks? What could healthcare actually look like if this technology takes off?
Well, the vision is pretty transformative.
Okay.
Think of MSH as like a distributed artificial general intelligence.
Okay.
That's been tailored specifically for healthcare.
Okay.
Instead of having one massive all-knowing AI, you have this network of specialists
Right.
that can adapt to each patient's needs and give truly personalized care.
Okay.
And this approach could allow for a level of precision and proactivity that we've never seen before.
Can you give us an example of what that patient experience might be like?
Yeah,
How would these different specialized AI agents actually interact during a typical healthcare journey?
sure. Let's imagine a patient, Alex, goes to see their doctor. Maybe in person, or maybe just through a secure messaging app.
Mm-hmm.
Behind the scenes, an AI agent that's keeping tabs on Alex's health data notices something a little off with their recent blood pressure readings.
Okay.
This triggers a consult with another AI agent, one that specializes in cardiovascular health.
Okay.
Let's call it HeartWatch.
Okay. Heart wash.
Right. Now, HeartWatch might recommend some additional tests.
Right.
And then another AI agent steps in and automatically schedules those appointments.
Okay.
And then once the test results are in, a different AI analyzes them, looking for specific things.
Yeah.
And then even the process of getting pre-authorization from Alex's insurance, that's handled seamlessly in the background by an agent like Claim Assist.
Right.
So for the patient, the whole experience is very smooth and integrated. It's like having a personal care coordinator working for them around the clock.
So even from that first point of contact, there are multiple AI agents working together,
Yeah,
coordinating all the necessary steps.
that's right.
What happens if Alex then needs more specialized care based on those initial findings?
So that's where the power of this MAH collaboration really comes in. Let's say the initial tests suggest a possible neurological problem.
Okay.
A radiology AI, maybe called Neuroscan, would then review any brain scans.
Right.
And because it has access to this huge database of medical images,
Yeah.
Neuroscan could pick up on even subtle things very accurately. If Neuroscan sees something, it might flag it to a neurology specialist AI.
Okay.
We'll call this one Synapse.
Synapse.
And Synapse, using Alex's medical history and Neuroscan's findings, could recommend a specific course of action, like an EEG or a consult with a human neurologist.
Okay.
And all along, other agents would be taking care of the logistics.
Okay.
Schedule Pro would be making appointments with the right specialists.
Right.
Pre-auth would be handling insurance approvals. And even a patient support AI, like Care Chat, would be there to answer Alex's questions in plain language.
So it's this incredibly efficient, interconnected system with different AI experts
Yeah.
weighing in at each stage of care.
Exactly.
What about after a diagnosis is made and treatment begins?
The coordination doesn't stop there. It goes right into the treatment and follow-up phases. So if surgery is needed, a surgical planning AI, Precision Cut, could help the surgeon with pre-op planning and even give real-time guidance during the procedure. Afterward, a monitoring AI, Vital Track,
Okay.
could constantly analyze Alex's vital signs and how they're recovering,
Right.
alerting the human caregivers to any potential problems.
Right.
And when the final pathology report is in, an AI specializing in personalized medicine, GenePath,
Okay.
would analyze that along with Alex's genetic information to tailor their post-op care and identify any long-term risks.
Okay.
And the GP's AI would continue to monitor Alex's overall health and coordinate any follow-up appointments. So it's this ongoing cycle of specialized agents working together to make sure Alex has the best possible outcome.
Now, one thing that comes to mind is, how do all these different AI agents actually talk to each other?
Yeah,
Would it be some kind of complex technical language
Yeah.
that we wouldn't understand?
that's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's a really important point. We see this a lot in sci-fi. The idea of AI developing their own like secret language.
Right.
That's impossible for humans to understand.
Hmm.
But in healthcare, it's actually the opposite.
Hmm.
The focus is on AI agents that communicate with each other and with healthcare professionals using natural language.
Okay.
Language that humans can understand. This makes things transparent.
Right.
And it makes it easier to integrate them into the existing human workflows.
That makes a lot of sense for transparency and accountability within the system.
Exactly. So using the really sophisticated natural language processing powers of LLMs,
Yeah.
these agents can interact in a way that's easy for doctors, nurses, and other healthcare providers to understand.
Mm.
It's like having a team of human colleagues constantly sharing updates in a clear and concise way.
Right. Okay.
This natural language approach also makes it a lot simpler to integrate these AI systems into the current healthcare settings.
Yeah.
Healthcare professionals don't need to learn a whole new technical language just to understand what's going on.
Right.
Right.
And what about if you want to add new AI agents or update the existing ones? Would that require a major overhaul of the whole MOS network?
Well, that's another big advantage of these natural language interfaces. As new AI agents are developed for specific needs,
Right.
or if we update the existing ones, we can integrate them into the MS network much more easily.
Mm.
We don't need to do a lot of complex re-engineering, so it's adaptable and scalable, which is really important in the fast-changing world of AI in medicine.
Now, you mentioned accountability earlier. How does using natural language help with that?
So because the agents communicate in natural language, we can easily record and track their conversations,
Okay.
and human experts can review them.
Hmm.
So it creates this really clear and complete record of the decision-making processes inside the MASH network.
Right.
So if something unexpected happens, we can look back at all those interactions
Okay.
and understand why specific recommendations were made.
Hmm.
That transparency is crucial for building trust in MASH.
Right. Right. So instead of having one big central AI system with all the patient data, these MASH networks are decentralized.
Yes.
Why is that decentralized approach so important in healthcare?
Decentralization is super important when you're dealing with sensitive health information.
Yeah.
In a MASH network, each specialized agent is trained and works on its own separate data sources.
Okay.
So it's a much more distributed approach. And that's key to protecting patient privacy.
Right.
If we had a centralized AI model trained on everyone's data,
Yeah.
that would be a huge target for hackers. And if that data got out, it would be disastrous.
Right. That's a huge concern. So by keeping the data spread out among those specialist agents, you're creating these protected information silos.
Yes, in a way.
Yeah.
But it's all very carefully controlled and managed.
Yeah.
This approach also helps to avoid what's called algorithmic monoculture.
Okay.
Imagine if every medical school used the exact same textbooks
Yeah.
and the same curriculum
Yeah.
with no exposure to different clinical experiences.
Right.
All those doctors might be really knowledgeable,
Right.
but they could all have the same blind spots.
Yeah.
It's the same with AI. If every AI system is trained on the same data using the same methods,
Right.
they'd all be vulnerable to the same biases.
Yeah.
And they might fail under similar conditions. A decentralized network where agents are trained on different and relevant data sets,
Yeah.
that adds a level of redundancy and oversight.
So each AI agent is like a specialist,
Yeah.
trained only on the specific data it needs for its tasks.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, for example, an AI agent that specializes in analyzing medical images,
Yeah.
it would only need to be trained on a huge collection of X-rays, CT scans, and MRIs.
Okay.
It wouldn't need access to the patient's genetic information or their entire treatment history.
Right. Okay.
Likewise, an AI focused on medications would mainly use data from electronic health records
Right.
and pharmacy systems.
Yeah.
You wouldn't need biometric data or lifestyle information.
Okay.
And if an agent needs extra information for a particular task, he can request access from other authenticated agents within the network,
Okay.
all through secure and trackable channels.
That's a much more robust and privacy-preserving design. Now, you mentioned federated learning earlier. How does that fit into this whole decentralized approach of AI-ish?
So federated learning is another interesting way to do decentralized AI development.
Okay.
It lets multiple healthcare organizations work together on training AI models
Okay.
without having to directly share their raw, sensitive patient data.
Right. Okay.
Instead, each organization trains a model locally
Yeah.
on their own data.
Right.
And then they only share the updates to that model, like the learned patterns and insights.
Okay.
And those are combined to make a stronger and more generalized global model.
That sounds really promising in theory, but you also mentioned some challenges with it.
Yeah, putting federated learning into practice can be tricky,
Okay.
especially with those really big models that have billions of parameters.
Yeah.
It can be really hard to transfer all those model updates
Yeah.
between different systems.
Right.
But MASH, with its focus on smaller, more specialized AI agents,
Okay.
could actually make federated learning much more efficient and practical in healthcare.
Okay.
Because each agent is only dealing with a smaller set of tasks.
Yeah.
The models can be smaller too.
Yeah.
And that makes it easier to communicate and less resource intensive for training and using them. However, it does require us to really understand what information each agent needs from other domains to be effective.
We've talked a lot about the potential benefits of GAMMH, but let's go back to those risks you mentioned. What are some of the things we really need to watch out for with these interconnected multi-agent systems?
One of the unique risks of multi-agent systems is the chance of cascading errors.
Okay.
So in a system where AI agents are working in sequence,
Yeah.
where the output of one becomes the input of the next,
Right.
an inaccurate or biased result from one agent could get amplified as it moves through the network.
Right.
And that could have bad consequences for the patient.
Okay.
So the overall reliability of the MHH network really depends on how accurate each individual agent is
Yeah.
and how well they interact.
That's a serious concern. So what can we do within an MAH network to prevent those cascading errors?
Well, the interesting thing is a well-designed MH network could actually be more reliable and resilient than a single giant AI system. The diversity of specialized agents within the network
Yeah.
can help counteract that algorithmic monoculture we talked about.
Right, right.
Ideally, some agents would have enough knowledge across different domains to act as checks and balances
Okay.
to limit the spread of errors.
Right.
We're already seeing this in general LLMs, where agents are made to debate each other, and that actually improves the accuracy of their reasoning. And in healthcare MH systems, we could have special support agents
Okay.
whose job is to double-check the outputs of the main models.
So it's like a built-in peer review system within the AI itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we could have these dedicated quality assurance agents at different levels of the MH architecture. But, probably the most important thing, at least for now, is human oversight.
Right.
Whether it's those human-in-the-loop systems,
Yeah.
where humans are actively involved in decisions,
Right.
or human-on-the-loop, where humans are supervising and monitoring the AI.
Yeah.
That human element is going to be crucial until we're absolutely sure that these systems can operate safely and reliably on their own.
You mentioned categorizing AI agents as clinical and operational.
Yeah.
How do those two types interact within a MSH network?
Right.
And why is that collaboration so important for healthcare as a whole?
So clinical agents are all about direct patient care.
Right.
Things like diagnosis, treatment planning, and ongoing monitoring.
Okay.
Operational agents are about the behind-the-scenes stuff.
Yeah.
Administrative and logistical functions,
Right.
like scheduling appointments,
Yeah.
allocating resources, and billing. They might have different goals and use different data,
Right.
but they need to work together for the healthcare system to run smoothly.
Can you give us some specific examples of how those clinical and operational AI agents would work together in a MSH network?
Sure. Let's imagine a clinical AI agent is monitoring a patient with a chronic condition, and it notices a sudden change in their vital signs, something that needs immediate attention.
Okay.
This clinical agent would then have to tell an operational agent in charge of scheduling,
Right.
and that agent would prioritize that patient for an immediate follow-up,
Okay.
maybe even arrange for them to be transported quickly.
Right.
On the flip side, an operational agent managing the hospital's drug inventory
Yeah.
might see that they're running low on a particular medication, and they could proactively alert the relevant clinical agents
Right.
so they can adjust their treatment plans in advance.
So it's a two-way street.
Exactly.
Each type of agent gives valuable information
Yes,
and triggers actions from the other.
exactly. And if we can combine data from both types of agents,
Yeah.
we can create some really powerful predictive models.
Mm.
For example, AI could look at electronic health records, appointment schedules, and patient flow patterns,
Okay.
and predict when demand will be high for certain services.
Right.
And that would let hospitals adjust staff levels
Okay.
and make the best use of their resources to cut down on wait times and make patients happier. And as the tech gets better and the rules become clearer,
Yeah.
we might even see the lines between these two categories of agents blur even more.
This all sounds incredibly promising, but what about putting it all into practice?
Yeah.
What are the things we need to think about when it comes to adopting these MAH networks in the real world?
In the long run, MAH could save a lot of money by streamlining clinical and administrative operations.
Right.
But the upfront investment needed to get it all up and running will be significant.
Okay.
We'll need big upgrades to IT infrastructure, things like faster networks,
Right.
robust cloud computing,
Yeah.
high-performance hardware,
Okay.
and secure and scalable data storage solutions.
Right.
And then there's the cost of beefing up cybersecurity,
Yeah.
training healthcare providers and staff on how to use these new systems, and making sure it all integrates seamlessly with the existing systems.
And you touched on the challenge of integrating with existing systems.
Yeah.
That can be a huge hurdle in healthcare.
It really can. Many healthcare organizations are still using old technology and systems that don't play well with modern standards.
Right.
While the natural language capabilities of LLMs can help bridge some of those gaps,
Okay.
allowing the AI agents to interact with older systems.
Right.
In a lot of cases, we're going to need big infrastructure upgrades
Right.
or custom software development
Yeah.
to make sure data can be exchanged smoothly and systems can talk to each other. Healthcare systems will have to weigh the costs of all this against the potential long-term benefits.
Right.
Things like increased efficiency, better patient outcomes, and lower operating expenses.
So it's not going to be like flipping a switch.
No.
It's going to be a more gradual process.
Exactly.
A phased approach, starting with pilot programs in controlled environments, will be really important. This will let healthcare institutions see how MSH performs in real-world scenarios,
Right.
get feedback from users, and fine-tune things before rolling it out more widely.
Exactly.
A phased approach also lets them see the return on investment and refine their strategies as they go.
For sure.
So if AI is taking on more and more tasks in healthcare, what does that mean for doctors? Are we heading towards a future where doctors aren't as involved in patient care?
Well, we might see some things become more automated, where doctors aren't needed as much, like simple triage systems
Okay.
powered by AI that can direct patients to the right level of care based on their symptoms.
Okay.
But when it comes to complex cases,
Yeah.
situations that need careful judgment, critical thinking, and human empathy, we're still going to need the expertise and experience of human doctors.
So MIH is not about replacing doctors.
No.
It's about making them better.
Exactly. The AI agents in a MAMASH network would be like powerful tools for doctors and other healthcare professionals. They can offer insights from tons of data, streamline workflows, and even help with time-consuming tasks,
Right.
like taking patient histories through conversation.
Hmm.
But human doctors will still be in charge of overseeing and checking everything the AI does
Okay.
to make sure it's safe, accurate, and follows best practices.
Right.
And, most importantly, that it's aligned with each patient's needs and values.
So it's a partnership
Yeah.
between humans and AI,
That's right.
not a replacement.
Exactly.
But that means doctors and other healthcare professionals will need new skills, right?
Sure. Healthcare organizations need to invest in education and training to get everyone ready for this new world of AI in healthcare.
Right.
We're talking about skills like interpreting data from AI systems,
Okay.
understanding what AI can and can't do,
Yeah.
and learning how to work with AI to make clinical decisions.
Okay.
These things should be taught in medical school,
Right.
residency programs, board certifications,
Yeah.
and continuing education courses.
And it's not just about the technical side, right? There's also trust and collaboration.
Absolutely. We need to build a strong culture of collaboration and trust between doctors and AI. Electronic health records have been great in many ways,
Yeah.
but they've also added to doctor burnout because of all the extra digital work.
Right.
So we have to be careful about how we divide tasks between humans and AI,
Okay.
and design systems that are easy to use and don't make doctors more stressed.
Right.
We need to include doctors in the design and development of these AI systems from the start.
Yeah.
That way, we can make sure they actually meet the needs of both patients and healthcare professionals.
So we've covered a lot of ground here.